Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today's guest is someone who truly believes that media can change the world, and she's proving it through her work. Meredith Yinger is a Telly and Davy Award-winning director, documentarian, best-selling author, and the founder of SheTV Media, a female-led production company dedicated to amplifying untold stories through bold cinematic storytelling. Her debut feature documentary, Scars Unseen, explores resilience in domestic violence survivorship and is now being used in more than 700 educational institutions nationwide. She's also developing her next feature documentary, Vulva La Revolution, a fearless call to revolutionize women's sexual health. Meredith's leadership lives at the intersection of storytelling, advocacy, and impact, and I'm so excited to explore that with her today. Meredith, welcome to Expressions of Leadership.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here.
Now, Meredith, you grew up in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
immersed in acting, theater, and commercials from a very young age. How did those early experiences shape the way you understand storytelling today?
I love that question. And it's so funny when I tell people I'm from LA because I feel like we're like one of 80 of us here in Los Angeles, actually from here. And I was born and raised like in the beach cities. I go back like 4 generations of Los Angelinos, which is amazing. And I love LA. And it is such a mixture of people. And I think that's what makes it so great. And I was very fortunate. I loved theater growing up. Like I love musicals still. I'm a theater nerd to this day. I loved acting and just like really the expression of it. And I could see too just how emotionally drawn to stories I was. And I felt I was always more emotional than my friends. Like I always felt like I feel more than a lot of people. And I think that is now a gift, but it was interesting and early on being like the emotional or the sensitive or like being so moved by music and so moved by like dance and performances. And I felt that human connection from a very young age. And I think that's what really stuck with me is that storytelling in whatever form it is can really make people feel closer to each other or inspired or confident or scared or terrified, depending on the genre of what it is. And I just really love that emotions can connect us so much. And storytelling is such a huge, huge part of that.
And at what point did you realize that storytelling wasn't just a creative and emotional outlet for you, but a form of leadership?
Hmm. I think that this always goes back to my studying of documentaries in college at LMU. Shout out LMU, go Lions. And I really just feel like documentaries kind of blew my mind in terms of learning that that was a possible career option. I had always been so dead set on like broadcast journalism, anchoring, like investigative research. And that was sort of my MO going into college. And I feel like when I took my documentary classes and I realized that there's this other world that kind of bridges curiosity and impact together, that's where I thought it was so, so cool. And like documentaries like Blackfish and Misrepresentation, like really had a big impact on me. And like proved that they can, change the world. They can change their outlook. It can change societal norms. It can change advocacy, right? There can be policies. There can be outcomes from a film that are beyond just watching art, right? Experiencing art that are actually action. And I thought that was so incredible and like what power, but what responsibility, to have in that medium.
Now, in the work that you produce, you don't shy away from difficult or taboo subjects. How has your willingness to lean into discomfort shaped your leadership and also the way that you decide which stories are worth telling?
Hmm. I've always been very curious by nature. I always have like 100 questions in my mind. I was always the kid that was like, why? Like, why though? Like, explain it to me. How does it all work together? What are like, the impacts, the variables? I wanted the full explanation. Like, I didn't just want you to say yes, no, maybe. I always wanted a deeper answer to that question, or all of the questions, I should say. And I really think that we have so many topics that people shy away from because they are taboo. And I think a lot of my work is really trying to lean into that, because it's like, well, why are we uncomfortable about it? Why aren't we talking about it? Right? Like, what oppressive forces are telling us not to talk about it? What systems don't want us to know about this, or don't want us to talk about these things? And I kind of feel like that's a little bit of like an empowerment stance as well. Like, someone tells you not to do something and I immediately react like, okay, I'm going to do it then, like that's a challenge. And it's like challenge accepted in a lot of ways. And I just think that there's so much power in story and in telling stories that aren't told, specifically around like scars unseen with domestic violence. I think a lot of, that comes from the oppressive forces of like silencing women's voices. And I think that that is kind of like my undercurrent of where I really tend to lean in terms of like trying to amplify women and non-binary voices and those that have been marginalized, because it's just such a travesty to not show those stories and to not show those creators who are doing something different. Like, we've seen the tropes, we've seen it all. And I think a lot of people are tired of it, and myself included, right? Like, we crave new stories, we crave different narratives, we crave different perspectives, really just kind of trying to challenge the norms, I would say. And leaning into that is really interesting to me. And I feel like I like talking about things that people don't want to talk about a lot of times, because it's interesting, right? It's fascinating to me, and it's like undiscovered almost, right? Like, why aren't we talking about this? Like, let's dive in, let's figure it out together. And I think that's so cool, because I get to just constantly learn about new topics, new places, new people, new stories, and hopefully share them with a wider audience.
And in fact, SheTV was born out of your frustration with how women were treated and represented in the entertainment industry. What did starting SheTV teach you about leading from conviction rather than permission?
Hmm. I love that. I think that this has been a journey for me personally to realize that you don't have to wait for permission. And I think so many people and so many creatives especially like wait for permission. They wait for someone to say like, your script's amazing, or let's green light this, or an agent comes to you. Like, there are so many times, and like gatekeeping, I feel like, along the way, that people are like, oh, well, no one told me I was good enough. And it's like, yeah, but you're good enough. Give yourself that permission. And I think having that like mentality switch has been really powerful for me personally as well, because there's so many things that wouldn't be out in the world if someone waited until it wasn't perfect, right? Like, how many artworks, how many films, how many poems, how many things wouldn't be in existence if that person was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to wait until it's my turn. And I think that that's also like a barrier, right? Like, you're your own worst enemy and your own biggest critic. And I think if you can just change that, like switch that narrative, right? Like, I give myself permission because it came to me, like, I'm capable, like I can do this. You don't need someone else, like an external force, to tell you you're ready. Chances are you're, never going to be fully ready, or the artwork is never 100% complete, right? There's always something you can do. There's always something you can improve upon. But the important thing is to just start. And to give yourself that permission, I think, is something that's really cool and exciting. And I want other people to feel that way too, because like, why wait? Just give yourself that permission, greenlight yourself, and figure out a way to do it.
And as a female founder in a male dominated industry, what were the leadership muscles that you had to build early on?
Yeah, I would say resiliency is a really big one, flexibility. Um, I think having such an aggressively optimistic view of the world and of business and of everything, I think is something that I still really try very hard at. It's hard to be optimistic all the time. It is a muscle. Like you have to train yourself to always find the silver lining. And then when you find the silver lining, it's kind of like the ripple effect. Like then you only see positive things, or then you only see like good. Whatever you focus on amplifies. And I think that that is something that I've learned just from like a mental approach to things, but definitely like the flexibility and resiliency because it isn't easy. And it's like any entrepreneur understands, it's this graph that is a constant up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's like your daily cycle, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is so great. What am I doing? I have no idea. Like, oh, I got a client. Oh no, like I didn't get accepted into this. Like, yes, I love this next idea. And then it just kind of is this crazy cycle that repeats. And I think the bouncing back from the down parts faster helps you not take it so personally, right? Because I've received like thousands of no's, thousands of whatever, not right now, not really our thing, pass, whatever. And I think it's just easy to get caught up in those, but the more that you can be like, let it roll off your shoulders, slick like a duck and just slide off your back, then the ups are also more exciting because you're not dwelling on that. You're thinking about like, wow, this is so incredible. I can appreciate where I'm at right now. And I think the resiliency is something that's been a challenge to develop that, but I think it's been also the most helpful. Like you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna bounce back. You know how to recover from this. It's a no, not right now, but it's leading you, to the yes or to what is meant for you. Um, and I think those are probably the three things that are definitely tough, but necessary.
Yeah, and there's definitely a certain amount of trust you have to have in yourself as an entrepreneur. So what has entrepreneurship taught you about trusting yourself, especially during those ups and downs?
I think trust I don't think I've ever heard it phrased like that, which is so interesting. I really like that perspective. It's definitely trusting yourself has been a journey. And I think oftentimes I second guess myself a lot, but I have to just kind of think of the big picture and I have to zoom out sometimes because it's really easy to get caught in the weeds of things or, down in the nitty gritty. And then like to have that like zoom out approach where you're like, whoa, look around, right? Look around for a second. Look how far you've come. Look at what you've overcome. Look at, the journey up until today and sort of give more of like a top down view of what you're doing and what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. I think that's been very helpful because you can remind yourself like, oh no, like I did figure it out. Maybe it wasn't right away. Maybe it took me some time. Maybe I was down for a bit, but like you got back up. You did it. You completed the thing. You did overcome whatever that obstacle was. So who's to say you can't do it again?
And you're also a pretty positive
Yeah.
person. And you've spoken candidly about being bubbly and outspoken and looking younger and not always being taken seriously because of it. How did you learn to own your own leadership style instead of shrinking it?
That's a great question. Um, I have to think about that one for a second. That is that is tricky because it is sort of dependent on all of the different social situations, right? Like you can utilize what you might think or what I might think as like a hindrance or a negative quality or I wouldn't even say negative, but just like a greener quality, perhaps. Like maybe you feel too young or you feel like too inexperienced or whatever. And like utilizing that to your advantage, I feel like is also something to be self aware enough to know like how you come across to someone or how you might be perceived or, kind of be aware of that and like navigating those social dynamics, right? Like I am very bubbly. I am very like outspoken. Like I like to laugh. I have a good time. And a lot of times in, maybe the corporate world where things are generally more reserved, more serious, kind of reminding myself that like that's just a stereotype also, and like it doesn't have to be that way, and finding leaders or people in positions that like I naturally gravitate to or get along with well, that are outside of the norm or outside of the what you might quote unquote think of as like a serious business person, and realizing that like it can look different. And also, do we have to be serious all the time? Yes, there's a time and a place for being serious and having, you know, serious conversations and holding space for that. And also, you can enjoy the process. And I don't have to shut my humor down or silence myself or um pull back on my positivity or my exuberance or whatever that might be, just to fit into someone else's like box as to how they think I should act, or what they think a business owner looks like, or what they think a filmmaker should be or should act like. And I think like it was Glennon Doyle, right, that says like should is a cage. And I think I love that. And that's like a reminder for me too, as to shoulds shoulds are only going to harm you or hold you back. And I think just embracing who you are, and trying to stick true to that is a challenge, but also is like the best and most rewarding thing that you can do, because then, oh my gosh, look at all these things that I accomplished and I didn't change who I was. Or like that was a situation where like I could have acted this way just because I knew, how to fit in or how they expected me to be. But like, where's the fun in
Yeah, exactly. Well, Meredith, I want to take a brief pause here because your journey into leadership through storytelling really sets the stage for the impact work that you're actually doing now. So, when we come back, we'll dive into Scars Unseen and the challenges of telling stories about domestic violence and what Meredith learned about herself and her leadership in the process. Stay with us. True transformation starts from within. The Forward Project partners with organizations to create meaningful culture shifts and develop leaders who inspire real change. If your team is ready to move forward with purpose, visit www.theforwardproject.co. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today I'm joined by Meredith Yinger, award-winning filmmaker, founder of SheTV Media, and director of the powerful documentary Scars Unseen. Now, Meredith, you dedicated most of 2022 and 2023 to finishing Scars Unseen. What did that level of commitment require of you as a leader, emotionally and mentally and creatively?
Yeah, this film was definitely a labor of love, as most films are. And especially in the documentary space, sometimes films take upwards of 10 years to 20 years to 30 years, depending on if you're following, the interviewees or who and what the film is about. It can be a very long time. And this film probably was about 5 years, 5.5 years in the making, from the start of it to festivals. And we still were in a few festivals this year. So it has been a long journey, a long process. And definitely the process of post-production and completing a film after you filmed everything is grueling. And they say, filmmaking is not for the faint of heart. And I truly believe that, especially documentaries as well, because there's this added layer of responsibility, but also of like care and sensitivity, especially given the subject matter. And I feel like I took it so seriously upon myself to make sure that I was doing it justice, but not necessarily that, but making the three women, our three leading ladies, Adrienne, Trish, and Maha, like proud. I wanted to showcase, their stories in a way that was truthful to how they felt and what their story was and how they wanted to share it. A lot of times films like throw you in the middle of, you know, the most dangerous moment or the shock factor, or kind of play around chronologically with the timelines as well. And that was something I sort of strayed away from for Scars Unseen, because I really wanted it to be as true to our interview as our sit down of them recounting their story as possible, and make sure that it was in a way that felt natural, didn't feel forced. It wasn't like, you know, trying to push anything. I really wanted it to feel as natural as possible and be as careful and sensitive in that process as well. And so that did take a long time in post production. And I was so fortunate to work with my incredible editor, Sarah. Hi, Sarah, if you're listening. And she really understood all of my reservations or questions in terms of going back and forth. She was hugely helpful to me to have as a sounding board for any parts of the film. Like, how can we say this without saying this? Or do we even need to, you know, include this, and kind of cutting down to really get it to as succinct as possible, but as true as possible, because the interviews themselves were at least 3.5 hours long, and the segments in the film ended up being, you know, 20-25 minutes. So that's a lot. That's a lot to go through and to cut down, and choosing what to include and not include. That was such a grueling process. And I felt like emotional about it as well in post production, because you're constantly hearing and reliving these experiences alongside these women. And I still know frontwards, backwards, upside down, sideways, you know, every word from the film by heart. And like that really sticks with you and makes an impression. And so there is so much love in it as well. And I'm just honestly in awe and feel honored that these women have trusted me with their stories, and we're at a place where they really wanted to come out and talk about their experiences. And a lot of them are paying it forward in some respects and doing incredible work. So that was a very grueling and intense process. But I'm very happy with the end product. And I really am so thankful to the team of folks that worked with me, especially in the post-production process, because that is another huge undertaking. Like, there's always a new story coming out in the different phases of making a film, but truly in post-production that was tough emotionally for me. It was very draining. And also I wanted to make sure that I was sticking to the deadlines and, you know, not slowing the process too much, but also learning like when to step away, when to take a break, like, and trying to be cognizant for myself and protecting my space and everything, my mental health as well through the process. And really just trying to put as much care into it as I could.
And you mentioned that domestic violence is something that's also touched your own family and friends. How did navigating that personal proximity influence the way that you led this project?
I think the more that I was speaking out about this issue specifically, the more people came forward in my life or adjacently or through friends. And I think that was heartbreaking, but also eye-opening in the sense of pushing me forward, like propelling me and utilizing that as a reason to keep going, as a reason why this story needed to be out there, as a reason like why the film needed to be finished, you know, why I needed to keep going, because there are so many stories like that. And it's so unfortunate, you know, it is like 1 in 3. And I think it is so common. And people oftentimes think of it as like an over there issue, and not in my neighborhood, not in my, you know, yard, not in my right problem, but it really is so close to home for a lot of people. And chance, and you know, statistically it is more so than you might think. And I think I really just utilize those stories to like push me forward, to hopefully let people know that like they're not alone in this, and that other people have made it through, and that there are resources and people out there that can help. And the more that we're able to be comfortable talking about it or going and seeking help or just being an ear for someone, and kind of create a community or a support around each other, the better off I think our world will be.
And you mentioned this 1 in 3. And before the pandemic, you were saying it was 1 in 4. So it's really shifted now in a big way when you think about it, from a quarter of the population to like a third of women, the
Yeah.
women population. How did that shift impact the urgency and responsibility that you felt as a filmmaker?
I think post COVID, the statistic really influenced focusing on these three women specifically in terms of I thought how how crazy that it was that we had these three incredible stories to align and to be a visual representation of that statistic and to kind of showcase how dire that number is in a visual way, to showcase like these three women's stories are so vastly different, and yet they have some similarities, they have commonalities, and their power and resilience is incredible. And like there are more stories like that out there. And I think the statistic really just kind of pushed me to lean into those three stories and focus on the 1 in 3 as a visual guide as well. Um, and it was just kind of, I guess, meant to be that we already had filmed those three stories. We had everything kind of that we needed in order to piece it all together. And time was of the essence. I felt like we had to get it out there. We had to do it. I was like, if there's one thing that I will do, I will finish this film. And that really was just my main goal, to get that out there and to complete it so that their stories could be out there.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll talk about the resistance Meredith encountered with her documentary, Scars Unseen, and what it takes to keep going when people tell her the story is too hard or not marketable. Don't go anywhere. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. We're back on Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, here with our guest, Meredith Yinger, whose film Scars Unseen is now available on Kinema and used in hundreds of educational institutions nationwide. Meredith, you've said that it felt like clawing your way through festivals and producers because domestic violence isn't seen as a sexy topic. How did you lead yourself through that resistance?
Yeah, it was an uphill battle, I feel, in terms of applying to festivals, making those connections, and trying to get it accepted into places so that it even could be watched on a screen, with more than one person in front of crowds. A lot of people, it was like, great, thanks, but we're not touching domestic violence. There was a whole lot of pushback in terms of who would even pick up the phone or respond to my emails or, talk to me about this. And I guess I am so aggressively optimistic that I thought it wouldn't be like that. There are so many documentaries, there are so many stories out there about very tough topics that, have large streaming viewership, that are on Netflix or on Hulu or on, the bigger streaming spaces. And it was a little bit frustrating to go through that process, to hear not only from festivals but from like publicists and from other people that I was trying to work with in the process, that just either A, didn't get it, or B, were like, oh, I don't, yeah, that's not really sexy. And I was like, that is the freaking point. Do you not understand? Like, you are proving my point in everything that I'm trying to say and accomplish. It's like, because you don't want to talk about it, that's why we have to talk about it. And I felt like I told people that, and it was so frustrating. I felt like sometimes screaming into this void of trying to get people to hear that or to have it resonate. And I think honestly, what just kept me going was thinking about Adrian and Trish and Maha and thinking about how incredible their stories are and how much inspiration I have gotten from them and how I know other people will resonate and I know it will make a difference. And just kind of trying to remind myself, okay, maybe that's not the right audience. Okay, maybe that was obviously wasn't the right fit for the person that I talked to about that in terms of publicity, or not the right distributor or not the right fit. Um, and that is really challenging because every filmmaker like wants their film to be in festivals. They want it to be seen. That's kind of like such a huge moment. So I'm very thankful to the film festivals that have accepted us and have given us a platform and a space, because that's been the coolest part, is to be in the room when people are watching and reacting to your film. And what I worked for so many years on, and dedicated so much of my life to at this point. I think that was like such a cool and rewarding experience to have people come up to me afterwards and say, like, oh my gosh, I really resonated with this, or I loved this part, or her story sounds like my story. And just have people connect over it, I think I'm so thankful, that the film festivals that we've been in have given us that space and platform. And I hope that we can continue to build on that. And Kinema is a huge partner. And I love Christy, the founder, what she's doing in terms of giving indie filmmakers, and especially documentaries and especially impact films, this space to host your film, but then also you can host community screenings through it. People can watch your film, and most of the proceeds go back to the filmmaker, which is so rare in terms of these deals. That doesn't usually happen. So I'm very grateful to them as well. And I'm hopeful that more people will be open to it. And that's another thing that I've been trying to lean more into, is telling people like, yes, it is a documentary about domestic violence, but it's really about hope. It's really about healing. It's really about these three women and what they have overcome. And even if you haven't had a firsthand experience, and there is some part of their story that like you can connect with, or that you can find inspiration from, and hopefully walk away just feeling a little bit more empowered.
And what did you learn about yourself from making this documentary?
Ooh. I've known that I'm an impatient person, but this is definitely a testament to that. Really trying to lean into the patience is something I am still working on. Because like I want it done yesterday. I want this. I want to have accomplished this already, and really just like trying to focus one day at a time, one milestone at a time, and trying to really celebrate the wins, no matter how big or how small, along the way. Because it is easy to be like, oh well, I didn't do this, but it's like, yes, but also, like we were in 7 festivals, like we did do this, like people have had a response from this. It is inspiring people, it is making change, and that's been really challenging. I think also I am very hard on myself, and I think that's another part that came out, just in terms of like the grueling down times, or the clawing, or the conversations where I had with those festival people being like, I don't really know how to program this, and I'm like, oh, like just let me explain this to you. And I felt like I was just explaining myself over and over again. um but the right message finds the right people, right? So I think it was a challenge, a test of my patience, but also just keep going. I kept reminding myself just to keep going and to focus on the good, and to focus on the wins that we have had. And that's all you can really do.
And speaking of those wins, you also said that if you're not enjoying the process, why do it? How does that philosophy shape the way that you lead creative teams?
Mm. I always like to remind people, like, especially in film, because people can be so serious on sets or take themselves so seriously. And this is obviously not just specific to the entertainment industry. This is probably most industries. People at certain levels, I guess, take themselves very seriously, and everyone is ego based or title obsessed. And I just like to remind people, like, on sets or if we're doing a commercial or branded content or whatever, like, we're not heart surgeons. We are not in a room operating life or death, situations. Like, it is okay to enjoy the process. It is okay for it to not feel so rigid all the time. Um, and I also like to approach things in a more collaborative way, like I mentioned, just in terms of assembling a creative team. Like, I like bringing on people that like to collaborate. I like people that can do multiple roles because most people can. And it's probably going to be better if you allow people to have an input, um, instead of shutting someone down, maybe because of their level or title or whatever that might be. Um, and I really try to do that on our sets and in our environment, because I think it is important. Like, filmmaking is so much fun and like creative, and there's so many different ways that you can have fun with it and enjoy the process. And like, how cool is it that we get to tell stories? How cool is it that we are here together creating this in La La Land, making movie magic? We could be in so many other places. But we're there. So I think that's something just to keep in mind, and that I like to remind myself also, when you do get caught up in the moment or in feeling really serious, or in taking yourself too seriously, I should say. Because you have to have a little bit of fun. Like, there's got to be a balance, and that's what I always really try and strike. It's the Libra in me, just constantly trying to find balance.
I love that. And your approach to leadership, especially creating collaborative and fun environments, feels so needed right now. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about mentorship, accessibility, and how Meredith's actively opening doors in an industry known for gatekeeping. By partnering with Expressions of Leadership, you'll reach an audience of professionals passionate about leadership and growth. For sponsorship opportunities, please contact us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com. You're listening to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today we're in conversation with Meredith Yinger, filmmaker, founder, and advocate for equity in media and women's health. Now, Meredith, you've benefited from mentors, and now you're deeply committed to paying that forward. What does mentorship mean to you as a leader?
I love mentors and mentoring. I think that some of the conversations that I have had, or coffees or informational interviews, have been some of like the most valuable information for me. And I think that is so rare oftentimes, to find people that are willing to tell you very honestly, very straightforward, very candidly, about maybe what didn't go well for them or what they would avoid doing if they were to do it again. And so I really try and lean into that. I've been speaking in a few like classes recently, and I do a lot of like alumni events, or informational interviews with folks from, new grads or people that are looking to get into the industry. And I think that's so important to do, because there is such an inaccessibility issue, I think, especially for entertainment, and this industry, to have people that you can call on, that you trust, or, it is a networking, it is a community, it is a small world, right? So I think it's important to put your best foot forward and to ask those questions, and to also pass that information along, to the next generation of filmmakers, and to, maybe the next person coming up after you. And it goes both ways. Like, you can always learn something, and I always learn something, from people that I talk to. And I think that is so cool and so needed. And I think we need more of that, because that's the best way to learn. Like, I'm a hands-on learner. So if you gave me an opportunity to shadow, or you give me an opportunity to, be in the room where it happens, like, I think that is so, so valuable. And I really try to do that as often as I can for our sets as well, or to do internship programs, or to have people just do a Q&A, like an info session, and talk about it, because um, it can feel very isolating, especially if you don't have a connection. Maybe you don't know someone, maybe you're new to LA, maybe, you've never worked in this industry before. And I think it's really important to pass along that information, and for myself to keep learning and to keep asking other people, like getting new mentors right along the way, or finding new people that I can ask these questions to, because that's the best way to learn and to grow.
What are some of the most valuable pieces of advice that you've received from mentors?
Hmm. I would say always surrounding yourself with smarter people, or people, not like people that are smart in different ways than you, I think is huge. Um, because everyone says, like, if you're the smartest person in the room, or you need to find a different room, right? Like, you need to surround yourself with people that are doing different things than you. And I think that's been really important, because there's always something new to learn. There's always a new approach, a new philosophy, a new tactic, a new technique to learn, and to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that have different perspectives too, or have different approaches, um, and to not get stuck in like the same way of doing things. um, some other good pieces of advice I feel like are just to continue asking questions. I think for me, especially, that hearing that, like, my curiosity and my constant need to ask questions is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a positive thing, and I can use that to my advantage as well. And that's how I learn and how I navigate the world. And like, curiosity is a good thing, and to kind of foster that and to stay curious, I think is huge. And I try and do that, and tell other people as well, because there's so much out there. The world's your oyster, and as long as you stay curious and are stay like interested in learning, um, I think that you'll only be pleasantly surprised at what's out there, or what you can accomplish.
What's something that you've learned from a mentee?
Mm. I think it's been really interesting the last couple conversations that I have had. I guess I just didn't really think that what I do is cool. And like, I don't like, that was refreshing. I just had a conversation with a recent grad, and she reached out to me, and it like almost brought me to tears, because it's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm so focused, like future looking, that it is cool, it is a cool thing to be doing what I'm doing, and to be, and like how lucky I am to have the experiences that I have, and to know that like other people are looking up to me. I feel like is something that I take very like to heart and seriously. And to think like, oh yeah, I did do things a little bit differently than some people, and like that's okay. um and that all roads lead to Rome, if you will, right? Like, there's no one way to do things.
And now accessibility is clearly a very high value of yours. How do you think making the industry more open, more
Mm.
inclusive, actually benefits everyone, not just women?
Yeah, I think this, especially like in indie film, in the indie filmmaking space and beyond, like bridging that gap and making entertainment more accessible and making it more inclusive is only going to benefit everyone, because we'll have such cool, new, interesting, fresh perspectives, which will then be cool, interesting, fresh TV shows, documentaries, feature films, plays. Like, it will just be so much more interesting. Like, the world, the shades of color that are possible when we include more people, to actually be representative of what the world is, um, in all of its shade, in all of its glory, in all of its ugliness as well, like in everything. I think it's going to be so interesting. I think we'll have such more fascinating, fresh content. And I think everybody wants that, right? Like, we live in such an entertainment world where we're constantly streaming, constantly watching videos, constantly, looking at who's doing what. And I think the more accessible, the better. And like how cool to live in a world that people all over are telling stories and they're being heard.
So, Meredith, when you think about leadership in the entertainment industry, what's a myth about what it takes to succeed as a leader in entertainment that you'd love to dismantle?
I think there's this idea that to be a leader or to be a director or to be there's like this belief that you have to be like a type of person. I know that's a vague response, but like like you have to fit this very specific mold of like, oh man, if you want to be a top director, if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to be like cutthroat and you have to stomp on other people to get there and you have to push other people's work down and like fend for yourself. And I think that is like such a disservice to what filmmaking is, because filmmaking is so collaborative, and some of the best directors, or my favorite like directors and filmmakers, are the most collaborative people. Like they are constantly collaborating, working with, you have to be a team player. And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is when you're on a film set, no matter the size, like you're on a team, and there's department heads and there's all of these moving parts and there's so many different people that you have to check in with. And I think that there is this myth that it's like oh, the director is just the one person, like that's who the whole film, you know, depended on. And it's like, yes, and it's like every single person on that crew, every single like, credit that you see in the films is what it took to make that film what it was, and how much of a collaborative like approach is needed. And it is a team sport and you have to be a team player. And if you don't play well with others, like good luck, because people are going to remember if you were a jerk to them. People are going to talk about how terrible of an experience it was hiring you. And like word gets around very quickly. And I think that's such a disservice, and that's something that I would want to squash.
We're going to take one final break. When we come back for our final segment, Meredith shares her vision for the future and the legacy she hopes to leave. And then we'll wrap with some wisdom and whimsy. We'd love for you to be a part of the Expressions of Leadership community. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. This is Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and I'm here with Meredith Yinger, founder of SheTV Media and the creative force behind Scars Unseen and the upcoming documentary Vulva La Revolution. Meredith, Vulva La Revolution feels like more than a documentary. It feels like a movement. What vision are you holding as you bring this film to life?
Yeah, I really do envision a movement for this film. It is not only going to be a standalone documentary, it's also going to be an animated series where we will go into the history of medical gaslighting and really visually represent and educate and I guess radically re-educate, since there is so much misinformation around vulvar anatomy and vulvar conditions and vulva care, through an animated series that's going to be like more digestible, more poppy graphics, easy to like understand, more accessible. And then the third part of that movement is documentary animation series and also a nationwide screening tour that we've partnered with the She Angels Foundation, where we're going to be traveling around to hopefully every state. We've got 5 cities confirmed so far, and we're going to create like an ecosystem around the screening of the film. So we'll be inviting our corporate sponsors and folks that are in each city, to kind of partner with us in terms of workshops, in terms of building out programming, being boots on the ground, being folks that after you've watched the film and you're angry and you have all this new information and you don't know what to do with yourself, we're going to channel that anger and channel that motivation towards giving you outlets, whether that be a workshop, whether that be a doctor now you know that you can call, whether you know of a new organization that you can put your money behind that is funding this incredible research about women's health, or, that is a grassroots organization that's advocating for policy change. I really want to create, a movement with this film and to take it beyond the screen and to really lean into the undercurrent of wanting to change and wanting a different healthcare system and wanting a more equitable future for everyone. And I know that films have the power to change that, and I know it is possible. And really, just kind of trying to build off of that energy that is around after watching a film, and really channel that into movement and into action and into tangible next steps, because that's always been like my number one complaint after watching some of my favorite films or documentaries. It's like, oh my gosh, I know so much now. What do I do with this? what can I possibly do with this information? How can I help? A lot of times is like the question, that people get, or what can I do? And really just try and give some options. We're not solving everything here, but just trying to give some solutions and some movement forward, and really create a new ecosystem and envision for the future as to like, what does an equitable healthcare system look like, and how do we get there? Who's in the game, and who can we connect with to kind of make our voices louder?
And who are you working with currently to make this come to life?
Yeah, so I partnered with Dr. Maria Uloco, who is incredible. She and I met about a couple, like 2-ish years ago, and we've been developing this film sort of together. And she is starting a femtech company that is hopefully going to be like the Google for women's health, for resources, for finding proper care, for everything. And I really admire her, and I'm so happy to be working with her on this project. And um, she has so many interesting connections through her work and through her fellowships and research that she has done, that we're pulling into this film, and we're pulling in to our team as well. And also through the She Angels Foundation folks, we're building, we're building our team. We're expanding our, community of people that are in this with us. And I think that's something that I'm so thankful to Maria and to the She Angels team, is that they heard what we're doing and they weren't like, good for you, good on you, good on you, passive, right? Like they were, okay, how can I help? What can I do? Like, we're in this to support you. We're in this together. And that's kind of the mentality around this film that I really want people to understand, is like, it's going to take all of us, and like, please join us, because we need everyone. We need everyone in order to make change, and to get involved in this process with us. So it's an open invitation still too.
And when you think about leadership beyond projects, what legacy do you hope that your work leaves behind?
Mm. I hope that the legacy I leave behind is that people feel like they can make a difference, and that their work can change the world. Um, and I hope that my work eventually will change the world. I know that's a big undertaking, but I really just, that's kind of the legacy that I would want to leave behind. I would want people to say, you know what, like, she went out, she did it for herself, for other people. I can do it too.
And where can people learn more about you, SheTV Media, and your films?
Yeah, so we're on the socials, SheTV Media, or LinkedIn. We can connect as well. Vulva La Revolution, we are currently fundraising and looking for corporate sponsors to help fund the next leg of production. We filmed a couple interviews already, and now we're fundraising for the next milestone, so we can just keep the ball rolling and keep progressing forward with production. You can find that on our website, shetv.me. Or through our fiscal sponsor, Film Independent. That's where folks can make tax deductible contributions as well.
Well, now it's time for our wisdom and whimsy segment of the show where I ask the guest one advice question and one fun question. So let's begin with the advice question. What advice would you give to someone who wants to lead with purpose, but worries that their work might be quote unquote too much or quote unquote too comfortable for others?
Hmm. I would encourage them to do it anyway. um I would just, yeah, you're probably the one standing in your own way, is what I've often learned about myself. Usually I'm the biggest hurdle. Just getting over, that self-consciousness or the reservations or holding yourself back. And if you think you're too much, like you just need to find you're just not in the right space. You're not in the right room, right? If you're being asked to dim your light for other people, they're not your people.
And now for the fun question.
Yeah.
What fictional world or place would you like to visit and why?
Ooh, I have a couple answers for this. There's so many. I love witches, wizards, and warlocks. I feel like I'm such a Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter nerd. So I would love to visit any of those worlds, or from the Fantastic Beasts films as well. The Shire, just I know that that's actually a place you can visit where they filmed, where all the hobbits live, and I just think that would be so cool and peaceful and serene. And maybe I'll make it to the real life place someday, but to live in that world, in that fictional world, and experience all of those people, I think that would be really fun.
Well, Meredith, thank you so much for joining us on Expressions of Leadership and for the courage and honesty and the humanity that you bring to your work.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and about all of the things. And I really admire what you're doing. And I'm just honored to have been a guest.
And to our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to follow and subscribe and share this episode with someone who needs it. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry. Until next time, lead boldly, lead thoughtfully, and never underestimate the power of your voice. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.